Explore more of the world, engage with others and embrace global cultures. Erkunde mehr von der Welt, tausche dich mit anderen aus und entdecke Kulturen weltweit. Is that okay? Or again?
That's perfect. All right, so welcome to today's Explorers, a series dedicated to sharing the inspiring stories and varying perspectives of those who have chosen to seek out life-changing adventure. Today I've got Doro on the line. Doro, where are you in the world and how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm just at Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, which is like being here at the shore in front of a beautiful volcano. And here it's in the morning, afternoon for you. We do have nice weather. The sun is just coming in. And yeah.
That's amazing. Much better view than I have right now. So let's jump straight into it. Let's get a brief understanding of your background leading up to your adventures.
So I would say like the thing that led me to the adventures most are my studies. So I am a geographer and study geography, but I always had a little bit of a thing for like adventure stories, even in the books that I read as a teenager. The heroes always had to make a journey. But yeah, through the excursions of my studies, basically I learned a little bit more the off the beaten path travels. And yeah, that led me eventually to be like a full-time adventurer, if you call it like that, or explorer, because I kind of felt I want to spend my life doing this.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And in your studies, did you gain any special skills that you use on your travels?
Yeah, for sure. It's so I'm like I study geography with a focus on natural risks and geomorphology. So landscapes especially are my focus and how they are like formed and generated. So I think, observe my landscapes a little bit more than maybe others. That makes it sometimes easier off-roading, sometimes makes it easier hiking or finding places that are interesting. Yeah, it's just like it gives you a little bit of an understanding where you're actually at.
You're playing, right? But you're
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to have that thirst of interest to lead your adventures. Where have you explored so far then?
So So I was, of course, like in Europe because I'm from Germany, so easy accessible. Then after my master thesis, I started a trip through Central Asia where I said like, okay, I'm going to travel east as long as my money lasts. And I made it to Mongolia and still had a little bit of extra time in Nepal and Malaysia. And I really fell in love with Central Asia because that was the first time also I spent time in a non-westernized culture. Yeah, and now, of course, the Pan American Highway, like North America so far, and now Central America. It's called the Pan American Highway, even though it's not like one continuous road. And I started in the east of Halifax, like in the east of Canada in Halifax, and then went up to the Arctic Ocean, turned around, and went down. And now, long story short, I'm in Guatemala.
Amazing. I guess your journey ahead will determine this, but what are the top 3 destinations that you hope to explore next?
So, destinations. So I think I'm really looking forward to mountains again. I love the jungle and the warm climates, but honestly, if I see the first like snowy mountaintops again, I will be very happy. So the Andes in general. I am looking forward to Colombia as well. And then one destination I'm really curious about, also with this just geography background, is the Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia, the salt flats, which seems to be really impressive.
And then I just like hopped on like
Yeah, I've seen many pictures of those.
Yeah.
I'm sure the experience sitting there will be very, very interesting.
Yeah. The car would probably not like the salt, but...
One of my other questions was, what's the pace in which you're taking on your journey? Are you trying to go about this fast? Or are you still figuring out that rhythm? Have you got a pace that you go with?
Yeah, you see me like sighing a little bit. So far, it was too fast. So I think I went into the typical trap of like being a little bit too, how do you express that when you're kind of stressed moving on? So I think there was the financial pressure in Canada and the US, because it's like, for me, as I'm working as an artist, very expensive. So I had to kind of move fast to reach the countries that are a little bit more affordable for me faster. Then I do have friends that are visiting me. So they book flights because they need to take vacations because they have jobs where they have to send a notice about when they're gone. And even if I'm slower, then I have to kind of push it to be in the places. And that was all a little bit too fast. So this is also the reason I have to be in Costa Rica in 2 weeks already, because a friend is coming. But I decided afterwards, from like after shipping the car to Colombia, I'll slow down because it takes away a lot of the experience if you're going too fast.
Like the first one that like popped.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's important to get that right. Equally to that question, then, in the age of Instagram and sharing your journeys on social media, how do you find that sort of pressure on your travels? Is there that pressure, or what's your experience with that?
Yeah, so I definitely could feel the pressure because I use social media as my marketing channel for my freelance work. But then I had the idea up front of the trip to do like a vlog, basically, or weekly videos about geography content on the road. I wanted to make more scientific van life vlog, but I realized pretty quickly that the whole thing, when you're alone, setting up the camera, driving past, getting back, getting the camera, or even drone shots when you're driving, and then like you're tired, you don't feel very extrovert and you have to talk to the camera even though you're not in the mood, or you're messing up settings. It is like, I really, really admire the people who are doing that. So for a while, I completely stopped. And that was when I was in the US. And now that I'm a little bit more into like the rhythm of traveling, I'm starting again, but with like short format and not with the pressure. Like, if it's great and if it works out and I'm having fun, then I'll do it. And if not, then I'll try to still film and find something afterwards, maybe. But I will probably not be like the full-time YouTuber.
Yeah, no, I think that it's an interesting thing to contend with, but
Yeah.
if you're not enjoying it, then there's no need to continue doing it.
Yeah, and it's just like a shit ton of work. And I think if you're traveling in a couple, it's just much easier because you can, one person can drive while the other person can work on something or find campsites or figure out where the next mechanic is. But if you're like a one person show, it's just insane to drive a couple of hours and then to edit another couple of hours. So short videos are okay, but like long documentary formats, like I personally need a desk and some peace for that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. You're touching it on a little, but what is it like traveling alone, especially as a female and things like that? Do you find, what's that like?
So I get this question a lot. So first, the alone part is, well, as I said, you're doing everything on your own. So all the decisions a day. And I feel like sometimes I only have a certain amount of decisions I can take. And if they're used up, I'm done. I cannot move anymore. So, oftentimes I don't really know where I'm going because I just like take my energy, I start driving, and then I see where I end up. But then it feels like very wobbly because I didn't make research or so. I really, really realize when I because I do take hitchhikers and passengers, and if they're starting to look for a campsite, it's so much more chill
Mm.
than doing that on your own. And then you're, of course, like, you have to manage all your emotions yourself. Like, if you're stressed, if you're anxious, if you're, I don't know, also if you're happy. So, yeah, I would say that's again a thing. You have to travel much slower to do that. Or actually, I have to, and to enjoy that. And then, of course, like, as a female, like, I mean, I didn't have any bad experience so far. I think I would have to say that first, like, because people are very interested in that. And this is the main concern, like sexual danger or being mistreated or whatever. Nothing at all happened. So I'm very happy. And I do think that the world is actually a better place than many people assume. But of course, you're a little bit brainwashed up front. So you're carrying all the fear with you constantly, because as soon as you mention countries like Mexico or Guatemala, everybody is just like, oh my God, you're going to be raped and robbed immediately.
Yeah.
So 3 years before I started this trip, I already started to hear from all kinds of people that I'm going to be in great danger. And that is something I struggle with, because these voices are still in my head, even though nobody, actually gave me the feeling of being unsafe. But then, of course, there are the dangers, and you really have to take care because it can happen. So I'm kind of constantly ping-ponging between like, hey, it's okay, I'm going there, it's fine. But then it's like, oh God, take care. But then it's like irrational fears again. So that is an emotion I also constantly have to manage. And I think maybe my solo male travelers, like, the mays, they have it to a certain extent as well, but maybe not so much.
Yeah. Do you have any other solo travelers that you follow on Instagram that you get inspiration from? Or I've seen some connections where
Yeah.
they're in the same situation, so I guess it works out.
Yeah. 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 I mean, Kato here, who's in the car, who's just giving me Starlink, is one candidate, but there is not too many people doing it on their own in a car. So there is more solo cyclists, which is really impressive.
Yeah, wow.
Today, there is one guy joining us who's walking the Pan American, like a young guy from Japan. I didn't meet him yet, but he will arrive here today, which is like, I'm very curious.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and then motorcyclists, obviously. But in a car, very, very few. That's mostly couples.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of your car, can you maybe give us a rundown of like your setup, how old the vehicle is, what it is, any
Yeah,
modifications you made?
I'm gonna show it like
But
it's
yeah,
here. Here you get it in the picture. Let's hope that the connection, is not failing us. So that's the car with the setup and the tent right now. So it is a Toyota Land Cruiser from 1987, not the big troopy model because I couldn't afford that. It is a smaller one, like a mid-wheelbase. I'm personally driving it in almost original state. I didn't increase the tire size. I didn't upgrade to a big suspension. The previous owner changed the differential, so they have like lower, gears. So I'm losing maximum speed, which can be annoying at some point, but kind of didn't want to change the differentials. And apart from that, there is an interior, which is I'm gonna do this like that. So you
oh wow,
see that
yeah,
is a couch setup which can be extended. So this little hallway can be closed, and if I tilt the seats, I just have perfectly 1.80 m to sleep inside. And yeah, that's basically it. It's a bit of a cheaper versions. I do not have a refrigerator. I do not have my own Starlink, why I'm happy to use Kato's because I just didn't have the budget. But it's been working out so far. And
so do you have a cooler box then? Just not a refrigerator, but cooler box?
I do have a cooler box that I never really use. I just tested in the beginning which food can last. So I'm anyway vegetarian, so
Okay.
meat is not a question. And then with okay, cheese, you need to eat it like in the same day, depending on the temperatures, but vegetables and everything, if you just buy groceries regularly, and I usually don't go crazy off grid, so I can come back within 3 or 4 days, and most of the food lasts without refrigeration. I didn't have any issues so far.
That's good. Yeah, no, I mean, it can be done. You're proving that it can be done. So that's great. What about pieces of equipment? Can you pick maybe 5 that you would always travel with? Never, they would just be on your list every time.
Well, for me personally, it's I'm pretty blind, so it's contact lenses and glasses. Oh God, then I would maybe name the typical ones like toilet paper, always important. The whole thing, knife, duct tape, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I do have my camera equipment, which I dearly love. Yeah, but it's small things, nothing fancy. I'm more on a minimalist side. There's no, yeah, there's no fancy fancy gear that I couldn't live without, I guess.
Yeah, your setup is very basic, but it works, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes I wish when I'm seeing more fancy cars, I feel like, oh my God, this could be so much more comfortable. But in the end, it would have taken me so much more time to save up for a bigger car.
Yeah.
Like money wise, I wanted a Land Cruiser, but money wise, for example, mine is just like, I don't know, a third of the price, maybe even less than the Troopy. So yeah, it meant like, okay, either I'm downsizing with everything or I'm not going.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, now we're getting into more of the reflective questions. What inspires you to explore?
So I think it's like more of like a backwards thinking. I really don't want to miss out on things in my life. I really like, if it one day ends, I want to look back and say like, okay, this was fun. Um, and then the professional part for sure, like being able to see all those different landscapes, to understand them, to also make connections all over the world. So, I was in some landscapes in the US that really reminded me of Mongolia. And you kind of understand the whole system of our planet a little bit more. So that is for sure. Yeah, I think that is like landscapes keep me going. There's always so much to see.
Yeah, the world feels. I mean, to me, when I'm spending like days at my house, I think the world is so small. But then, yeah, once you venture
Yeah,
out, you're like, oh my word,
yeah,
it's actually
yeah.
really big.
And it's also like a kind of resilience that you learn. So, especially in times right now where politically everything feels a little bit unstable,
Mm.
knowing that you can live simply is also a really nice skill to have.
How you meet other travelers and obviously other local people? How do you engage with others?
So it's different. You can meet on the road, just drive by and see, oh, there is another travelers because, it's always the kind of same car models or foreign number plates or so. So you wave each other down and you stop. Social media is a big, big part of it, of course. Like you connect to each other on social media and then you try to meet up at some point. It's funny because sometimes you take a detour of like 500 kilometers to actually meet somebody you never knew when, so that is kind of funny because it's such a commitment suddenly, but you're excited to meet each other. And yeah, I'm personally also going into hostels because I love to just connect with travelers. I love to change also to not only travel with like, the adventure rig travelers, but also
Yeah,
with backpackers, with cyclists, with people who are walking now.
yeah,
But yeah, this is also, it's as important as trying to connect with the local people because, of course, like you could end up hanging out around with a whole bunch of like privileged European travelers all the time. But then, yeah, why are you actually doing it?
yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's like those who travel to a country and then stay on a resort the whole time.
Yeah,
They miss out
yeah.
on the true culture.
And you could do that in like adventure travel equivalent, basically, and only hang
Yeah,
out with your lot, which is, of course, uncomfortable.
yeah, for sure. So, why is it important that we embrace global cultures?
Well, it's really important to connect. I feel that we're living in a time where people make us beings, like, how do you say this in the right grammatically correct way, where we're taught that we have to be scared from other cultures. We live, especially from a European perspective, but I do believe also from a US perspective, in a time where we have a lot of finger point towards other religions, the global south, other ethnicities, people that look different. I don't know, when I look at how much fear is directed towards people immigrating, for example, and I see how little the people know about the circumstances in which people live or also leave their countries, and then, how little they embrace other cultures that are only like, providing value, also, and enriching our lives. The more we spend time with other cultures, the closer we get and the more understanding we have for each other. And as we are privileged enough with our passports and our money to travel in other places by choice, I think we should do it more and embrace other cultures more to generous understanding and not live in too much fear.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting because as you travel, you experience the kindness of other people and generosity.
100%.
So we should do the same in the
Yeah,
West, welcome other
100%.
people.
And I am sometimes, I do have to admit that, I am sometimes really ashamed of like the culture that we have now in Europe of like not welcoming people at all. And as soon as you're like going to other countries, people are like welcoming you with open arms. And there, especially from my perspective of like Muslim countries I traveled in, people were insanely friendly, invited you to their homes, to weddings of their family, like, all those stories. And I feel like, I don't know, when did I the last time pick up a person on a street and invite them for a coffee or a tea to my home? Never,
Yeah, yeah,
because I never learned this. And this is something where I feel like we have to work on ourselves 100%.
agreed.
Yeah.
This kind of ties in with what inspires you to explore, but what are your goals when you explore?
So I think right now, maybe I'll look at it from the perspective now. It's like as I'm going back a little bit closer to this geography project that I wanted to do, I think my goal actually now for the next trip, like stretch of the trip, is to get back into looking at landscapes on a regular basis, understanding them, also recording that if I feel like it, and to just learn as much as I can. I also obviously want to fight my fears, like, and prove all the voices that I got like wrong to, yeah. And also spread it that you can do it as a woman, that you can do it alone, and that it's doable and you will not drop dead as soon as you leave your house.
Have there been any challenges that you've experienced so far in your trip?
For sure. I think, well, the anxiety and this whole thing is definitely one challenge. Then financially, it's difficult. To work on the road is challenging, and I will have to be more disciplined about it as well, because I tend to be distracted sometimes. But apart from that, I have to say the car is doing fine. So that is like something that I didn't expect. I only had one mechanical issue, and that was actually while driving into Bend, where there was a Land Cruiser specialist. So that
Wow.
was insanely lucky. Um, so yeah, I would say the psychological stress and the financial aspect are the biggest challenges. The rest is doable.
Yeah. Uh, so then what is one of the most meaningful moments you've had so far? Or you may not have experienced it yet, if you can think of one.
I don't know if there is like one real highlight. I guess the most meaningful thing overall might be that everything is actually fine, that I didn't run into the great troubles so far. And this is also what surprised everyone most. And yes, of course, there's beautiful landscapes that I could like point out. Like there was the Salmon Glacier in British Columbia that I absolutely fell in love with. Then going up to Tuktoyaktuk on the Dempster Highway and like reaching the native community at the end of the road and being welcomed there. That was great. Um, yeah, there's a lot of small moments, but I guess if there is a big one, I'm curious, but maybe it still comes.
Yeah, yeah. You've got a lot of your journey to go still. How do you think exploration as a whole has changed you?
Yeah, I would say I'm more resilient. Like I realized a couple of weeks ago because I went home and visited my family and friends, and I realized how calm and peaceful everything is. So I think resilience in general went up or goes up because you're under a little amount of pressure, like constantly. But then it's also definitely the trust of being able to deal with complicated situations and to live with very little. That is like, I don't know, give me a small backpack and I'm fine. So, and I am even getting a coffee from my hitchhiker right now. That is
Brilliant.
luxury.
That is
Yeah.
luxury. It's the small
Um,
moments.
yeah. Maybe that is like the meaningful moments. Picking up people on the road and then they make you coffee.
It's a good trade. You mentioned when you're at home. So when you are home, or is home where you are right now, you mentioned being minimalist, so maybe that is the case. But when you're home back in Germany, how do you explore locally? Like, how do you get yourself out in the morning to go check out some other place that's local?
Okay, so exploring at home was always a little bit difficult for me because I never owned a car. This is my first car. At 31 years, I bought the first car. um, and with public transport, it's always like it was until recently actually pretty expensive to get out of the city, and also you cannot reach all the places you want to really explore. So I didn't do that as much around Vienna as I would have wanted to. Now it's much easier because they have like a climate ticket where you pay, I think, 1,000 euros a year, and you can just use every public transport in Austria. So just like with that, like this random exploration is so much easier without a car. So I'm super glad that we're going that direction, because even though I love my car, it's just like a stinky old non-environmentally friendly thing. So I guess I will have to change that when I'm coming home, to kind of learn to explore on a daily basis and not getting stuck in the city on the weekends.
Yeah. So Explore More has a mantra, which is to explore more of the world, engage with others, and embrace global cultures. What does that mean to you?
I think that, yeah, that is, I mean, it already says it all. I think it gives a lot of happiness to explore more. It gives a lot of understanding and more empathy towards others, to embrace other cultures and learn about them, which we desperately need. Yeah, I think that all of that will just increase a lot of quality of life.
I agree. What piece of advice would you give to anyone who's thinking about life on the road like you?
Definitely that you have to bring a kind of stubbornness. Like if you decide for it, there will be some challenges, and it will take some time until you're ready. It's probably longer than you expect. And there is some sacrifices also in like not seeing your family or friends, or missing out on the babies that are born and the marriages and everything. So that is definitely a toll you're paying. But then you're meeting people, you're experiencing stuff, I'm very happy to have done it, but yeah, it takes a while until you're there, and then you have to persist a little bit. But it's possible, doable, and it's not as dramatic as maybe social media shows to you. It becomes a daily life as well, and it's not an adventure every day.
That's a good point. That's a good point about missing out on family changes and things. My parents also experienced that in 1977. So, but you have to go and have those experiences to expand your perspective.
That, and the thing is also, I mean, how I cannot even imagine how your parents did it back in the days, because now we have social media, we have video calls, we have, I don't know, like if I would want it, people could even track my locations, like live, for example, with like a satellite device or so. So we're way, way closer to each other than we have been in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again makes it feel like the world is very small, but when you're out there, it's big. Cool. Well, we're coming to the end of the show, and I wanted to give the opportunity. How can people follow your journey and reach you on social media?
Well, I do have like an Instagram account where I do post mostly daily stories and some posts and reel. And the handle is like Dorothée.post. And that is also my name. So if you Google me, basically, you'll find me also on YouTube. I do have a website, which I will redesign soon. And I'm happy about everyone who joins the journey. So it's a mix of geography content and a little bit of solo travel content, and sometimes feminist outbursts. So whoever is interested in that is very welcome to join the journey.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Dora, for joining and for sharing your perspective on everything.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for also providing the platform and doing all the work, by the way.
Yeah, I do this because it's fun. So as long as it keeps being fun, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point for all these things like social media and, I don't know, magazine work. So
absolutely. All right. Well, enjoy Guatemala and the rest of your day.
We will. Thank you so much. Have a good day, Charles.
Hey, thank you so much for watching the show. If you want to share feedback, please hit the comments below.
or head over to explmore.com/feedback for more information. If you want to see more interviews and other content, then please hit the subscribe button. Cheers!